This woman posted this video about how she started building tiny homes in her property for her children to live in. I mean, if this doesn't tell you just how bad the housing crisis is and how bad inflation, mainly price gouging, is getting, then I don't know what else will tell you.
I was recently informed that living in a shed is a dystopian nightmare. You know what? I think I'm gonna have to agree.
Hey guys, welcome to our shed and where we've been living the past 2 years.
Bought this shed to live in, and here's how it's going, part 2. My goal of making this a tiny house and living debt-free is looking more possible every day.
Can you legally live in a shed like this? Well, the shorter answer in most places is...
Okay, I've gotten a few questions about like what are my security measures around here. And because there's apparently a gang of kids running around the property in ghillie suits.
So I wasn't able to stitch this video, but I really want to show you guys what a lot of families are starting to do now in the US because of the housing crisis. This woman posted this video about how she started building tiny homes in her property for her children to live in. Not only is this an amazing idea, but unfortunately not everybody can do this. But some people who are able to do this in the US are starting to do this now because the cost of living is so damn expensive. And this is usually like a pretty normal thing to do in other countries already because it's part of their normal cultural practices. But in America, this is now starting to become part of our normal culture because our cost of living has gotten so out of hand. And it's really upsetting because when I look at this, I see people who, yes, they have this opportunity and that's great, but they will most likely never be able to actually buy their own home themselves. They will most likely have to live with their parents on their property for the rest of their life. And honestly, these people are lucky to even have that opportunity because many other people don't have that. And that's the next thing that I think about is the many people in America who don't have a support system like that, who will either most likely end up homeless or living in a shelter or living in like Section 8 housing if they're lucky to even get on those long ass wait lists. I mean, if this doesn't tell you just how bad the housing crisis is and how bad inflation, mainly price gouging, is getting, then I don't know what else will tell you.
So this is a darker side that she's telling about why people are deciding to move into sheds, which sounds kind of crazy to say, but it's a reality. She makes really good points. Number one, she's right. A lot of other cultures do prioritize communal living, multi-generational households. You may have a grandparents, the parents, and the children all in one household. And that's just the norm. In the US, we know that's not the norm. But because of inflation, because of price gouging, because of the cost of living, because of how expensive home prices have gotten since the pandemic especially, we are starting to see these alternative ways of living now, such as kids moving back into their parents' house, but not into the actual house, but into the shed. But it's not always such a dark reality like she's painting. Don't get me wrong. What she's saying is true. But there's also more of the positive side of things too, where people do it more so as a way to save money to actually be able to move out and afford their house, as we can see here.
Hey guys, welcome to our shed and where we've been living the past 2 years in Southwest Florida. I finally decided I'm gonna start sharing some more with you guys on what we've been up to, where we've been living while we're building our house. This tiny little home that's kind of like a little apartment on our parents' property. Decorated it for Christmas, getting cozy. We are in the final weeks of living in a shed, so follow along for more.
So as you can see, they are living on their parents' property in a shed, but they're not doing it for such a dark reason. They're doing it because they are building their house to be then move into in their final weeks of living in the shed. Again, why are they doing this? Probably because the cost of rent would be prohibitive and would slow them down or stop them completely from being able to save the money up for a down payment on their home that they're building or to buy the land that they're using to build their house on. So instead they opted to live in a shed on their parents' property, probably for free or for very little. So yes, there's a darker side to it, but there's also just a reality of people are getting more creative. And this is one of the ways that people are doing it.
Bought this shed to live in, and here's how it's going, part 2. My goal of making this a tiny house and living debt-free is looking more possible every day. Once we finished hanging the sheetrock and building the ceiling, we decided to check out what was going on with the solar panels. We checked the batteries and the panels and figured out that the inverter burned out from being too hot in the loft over the summertime. So we went ahead and hung these Walmart lights just to make it look a little bit better. We finished working on the floor for a little bit and decided to start working on the loft. We decided to use this foam board insulation because it was just a lot easier to handle in such a small space. And then we added the carpet. It was around this time that I moved into the tiny house temporarily, and it went through a couple different variations. At one point, we even decided that we were going to see what it would look like if we extended the bathroom onto the front porch, but it didn't take very long for me to realize that wasn't a good idea. I really didn't want to compromise the view I had from the front porch because honestly it was one of my favorite things about the design. So now, unfortunately, we're starting over with the bathroom design and we're trying to figure out what we're going to do next. So if you have any recommendations, please feel free to let me know, because honestly, this project's a lot harder than I was expecting it to be.
As you can see, some people are opting out of the system, so to speak, or they're just doing things differently. So this guy here, he is choosing to live in a shed because he wants to reach financial freedom or independence, and the way to get there faster, as opposed to buying a home, having a 30-year mortgage and paying these big numbers, or having expensive rent, he's deciding to live in the shed. This kind of makes me think about how they do things in Europe, for example. I could be wrong about this, but I think in Europe, a lot of the living accommodations are smaller. A lot of people live in flats or apartments, as we would call them, or smaller units, maybe even efficiencies or studio apartment size places. And it's not really as common for everyone just to have huge properties on sprawling land or even live in subdivisions. So I think that because of the cost of living, we may see a change or a shift towards just smaller homes in general. Smaller homes, converted shipping containers, sheds, tiny homes in general. We're probably going to see more of a shift towards that. Number one, just because it's more cost effective. And number two, because people are kind of tired of being on a hamster wheel and they don't want to be in a situation where they're exchanging their life force every day, exchanging their time every day, just simply to pay for the roof over their head. So this is pretty cool. This gentleman apparently was homeless for 3 years. Now, when he says he was homeless, I don't know what he means exactly. Was he on the street in a tent, or was he in a camper? Because he's drawing a lot of parallels or comparisons or contrasting his home, his tiny home or shed, to a camper. Notice he said no black tank, for example, no paper thin walls. A black tank is what is part of a camper where your waste goes. So he's basically saying that now he's in a stable place and he's never felt more at home. And this is a beautiful thing. And this is a way for people who maybe have lower incomes or falling on hard times to have a place they can call their own without having to take on a huge expense, like I said, a mortgage or expensive rent. And actually, I just answered my own question. I looked down at the bottom of his video, and if you can see it here, it says, I lived in a rundown camper for 3 years. Okay, so he lived in a rundown camper for 3 years after losing his house. Then he built the shed and made it his first real home. So as you can see, he was homeless, but he was living in a camper. He lost his house, had to go to a camper for 3 years, and now this is the first real home he's had that's stable in many years.
Can you legally live in a shed like this? Well, the shorter answer in most places is absolutely not. And the reason why is there's a set of building codes that most municipalities and cities go by that require floor joists to be at a certain width. So we use 2x6 floor joists in all of our sheds. But the way people are getting around this, and I'm not encouraging this by any means, I'm just telling you what people do. In most places, you can only have a storage shed on a raw piece of property without anything else on it if it's zoned agricultural. But the way people are doing this is they're making in-laws guest suites or making a bedroom for their kid that moved back in with them just to get them out of the house. And what they do is, if you already have an existing dwelling on the property, then you get the building on the property, even if it's a big one that requires a permit, get it inspected, and then finish it out later on.
So basically what he's saying is, he's answering the question, if you had it, because I know I did, where is this legal? Is it legal? He's saying that if you have a shed as a house in your backyard, say on your property for your kids, you can do it, but you need to get it inspected first, because otherwise you might run into some issues. And he went into all the details and the specs of the floor joists and all that, which for this video is not important to us. But he also mentioned something else that's important. If you want to live in your shed on your own property out in the land somewhere, it's illegal unless that land is zoned agricultural. And I thought that's interesting because I saw a comment on the video and someone said something to the effect of, you can legally live on the side of a road in a tent, but you can't legally live in your own shed. And that's such a great point. It's like, sometimes the laws are just out there and it makes you wonder what the actual purpose of it is. Nonetheless, let's see what else is involved in living in a shed out on your own and not, let's say, in your parents' backyard.
Okay, I've gotten a few questions about like what are my security measures around here. And because there's apparently a gang of kids running around the property in ghillie suits, now seems like a good time to show you guys what I do. Also, if something happens to me, y'all need to find the ghillie kids. So to start, at the very bottom of the mountain, at the start of my driveway, I have a gate, so you're gonna have to drop your vehicle here and I'm making you hike up. Then halfway up, we have yet another gate. That's because that way is another driveway going to my mom's house. So whichever way you're coming up the mountain, you're gonna have to ditch your vehicle. So once you've made the mile walk up here, this is my first line of defense, which they look sweet and cuddly, and they really are, but they're also trained to go, so. Then, of course, to lock my doors, this back door, the handle opens up like that. So that goes in here. Can't open that door. Same thing on the front. Not getting in that door. So then, God forbid, if you try to come through the windows, I've got several things lying around the house in separate parts of the house that I can get to easily. I also keep a taser. I've got several things of pepper spray, prison grade pepper spray, which is like 3 times stronger than bear spray. I don't know what all I can say on this app. Several fold out.
Yeah, we get it. She has a few pew-pews that she can have available in case someone wants to try her. So she's ready to go, like her dogs are ready to go. This is interesting because you think to yourself, all right, if I'm out in the wilderness or I'm out in the country somewhere and I'm not in some big house with a bunch of normal security features, I'm in a shed essentially. How do I stay safe from the elements? How do I stay safe from people up to no good? And she's showing you how you do it. Multiple safety points where you have to ditch your car because there are gates there. Dogs, how she closes her doors with the extra security features, and of course the pew-pews. So, hey, I'm all for it. And if you can get your own land and you can get it zoned how it should be zoned and you can build your own shed, I'm imagining that there's not much to it. I'm sure you still have to pay property taxes because we live in the US, but I'd imagine it'd be a lot less expensive, especially for someone who likes to be out on your own and kind of rough it out. Then this is definitely an option I could see being viable for a lot more people moving forward in the future. Again, because things are getting so expensive.
I was recently
Obviously, she's being sarcastic. She's basically saying that people make it sound like living in a shed, especially out in the country like she is some dystopian nightmare that they would never want to experience. And she's saying it's the opposite. She's saying she loves it. She enjoys it. She's out there with her chickens. And just, she mentioned the joy of not having a 30-year mortgage. And I think that even if you have to pay for property taxes, just not having to pay for a 30-year mortgage alone could make this very appealing. Again, it depends on who you are. Me personally, I'm not a countryside guy. I don't like to live out in the wilderness. I'm a suburban kid, essentially. So for me, I don't know if I'd really enjoy it. But the older I get, the more nice it sounds, if I'm being honest, especially not having to deal with a 30-year mortgage. So this is something interesting. Let me know in the comment section. Is this something you think you'd be interested in? Is this something that is like, that's cool for other people, but I need my comfort of living in the city or the suburbs? Let me know. And until next time, as always, make smart financial decisions.